Okay, number 12. What we're going to do is we're going to solve for x. So on this one, probably the best thing to do is it's got a common factor of 6. So let's divide everything by 6 and see what happens. So if we divide everything here by 6, let's rewrite the thing so I can mess around with it. Alright, so you could look at it as either factoring out of 6 and then dividing it, or just dividing everything by 6. Let's just do that. Alright, so of course that cancels, so x squared plus 4 equals 0. Alright, so let's do this. Let's try to solve for x. Subtract 4 from both sides, so x squared equals negative 4. Got a little problem here, don't we? If I wanted to take the square root of both sides to get rid of this, look what's going to happen. Oops, I don't want the squared there. So x squared equals the square root of negative 4. But it's not so much of a problem because I can take the square root of a negative now. We know how to deal with I. That's what this chapter is about. A whole bunch of it is anyway. So the square root of negative 4, remember when you take the square root of a negative it becomes an I. So we do that right away. That gets rid of that. Then the square root of 4 is just a 2. Now we don't write it I2, we write it 2I. So we just say x is equal to 2I. Let's go over here. Now this looks a little bit more complicated, but let's see what we can do. We can probably, we could probably make this into a, or do completing the square. Let's take this, put it on the other side so that we can work this out. Or, let's see, 9 nines are 81, 9 is negative 18. So, oh, this can actually, we can do this, watch. This is a perfect square, isn't it? It's x minus 9. Did you see that? Because I can take the square root of that, it is 9, and then I double that. I always look to see inside of here, and I double it, and I get 18. So that works out real nice. That equals 49. So now it's a perfect square. I can get rid of this square by taking the square root of both sides. So x minus 9 equals, oh, I should have put a plus or minus in front of this. Almost forgot. When I took the square root, I should put plus or minus out in front. Let's do the same thing here. We're going to put plus or minus. Actually, let's just do it here. Plus or minus the square root of 49, which is the same as plus or minus 7. Add a 9 to both sides, so x equals 9 plus or minus 7. Let's do both of those. 9 plus 7, let's write them down. 9 plus 7 is 16. That's one answer. And then x equals, let's see, do the minus part. 9 minus 7 is 2. So you get two answers. You actually get two answers for both of these. It's plus or minus 2i. That's two different answers, positive 2i and negative 2i, and here's two answers right here. That's number 12. Let's go to that's number 13 right there. It's number 12. Let's move on. Okay, number 14 says solve by completing the square. So they tell you how to solve it by completing the square. This is not a perfect square, so we need to move the minus 13 over to the other side first of all. Leave a little blank right there, and equals 13. Now you know what sign to put here, because remember how we find this. We take half of this and square it. When you square something, you always get positive. So let's do that. Let's take half of this, which would be 2. Technically it's negative 2, but when you square it becomes positive, so we don't really care. So half of this is 2. When you square it, it's 4. So I just add a 4 here. I can't do that to both, or to just to one side, so I have to do it to both sides. Now, by doing that, we made this into a nice perfect square. So it's going to be x minus 2 squared equals 17. Let's get rid of the square by taking the square root. So we take the square root of both sides, just like we did on that last problem. We put a plus or minus in front of it. 17 added 2. You could have probably just done that in one step, but I split it up into 2, and that's it. Number 15. This one's a little more complicated because of the 2 out in front. So let's get rid of that 2 right off the bat. We're going to do that by dividing both sides by 2. So let's do that. Divide this by 2, by 2, by 2. And of course you're dividing that side by 2 as well, but 0 divided by 2 is just going to be 0. So let's see what happens. We get x squared plus 4x. Let's do this. We know we're going to check that on the other side, so let's do that. Let's put this over here, and it's positive 3/2. Now we have to complete the square. Well, this looks very similar to what we did over here. It's got a 4 right in the middle. So let's do that. Half of this is 2, squared is 4. So it's going to be plus 4 here. Now you can't just do it on that side, you do it to this side as well. Now you could put 4 over 1, but watch, we're adding it to a denominator with 2, so let's make it 8 over 2. That's the same thing as 4. Now we can just figure out what that is. Now look at this. This now is a perfect square because we took half of it and squared it and put it here. So it's x plus 2 this time because of this sign right here. See, it was different. Equals, let's see what we get, 11 over 2. And now we got to get rid of this, take the square root of both sides. Take the square root of that, put a plus or minus out in front. Now we'll subtract a 2. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus. Now we got to simplify this though. It's not all the way simplified. So what I'm going to do, let's see the best way to do this. Let's write it like this. Square root of 11 over the square root of 2. We don't want a square root of 2 on the bottom, so we need to get rid of that. Let's go a different color just so it stands out a little bit. So we have to rationalize the denominator, as they say. So we multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2. Now let's see what happens when you do that. Let's continue writing down here, plus or minus. Let's see what happens. Let's multiply. Let's do the bottom first. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just a plain old 2. Alright, that got rid of our square root on the bottom. Now we got to multiply the top as well. That'd be the square root of 22. And I guess you can just leave it like that. Again, I don't have my answer sheet in front of me. I'm not sure how I left it on the test, but that would be fine. If you really wanted to, you could put it over one common denominator. I don't see why you would want to, but you could put it as over 2. So this would be negative 4 over 2. Negative 4 plus or minus square root of 22. You know what? I wouldn't even do it like this because I'd probably simplify it to this anyway. So I would just leave it just like that. Alright, we're going to solve another quadratic, but we're going to do it a different method. We're going to do it by the quadratic formula. So let's just review the quadratic formula briefly. Negative b plus or minus is something should be memorized. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that whole thing is over 2a. So let's plug stuff in. This is number 16. So x equals negative b. Well, b is negative 4, so we take the opposite sign of negative 4, which is positive 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Let's do that. Negative 4 squared is 16, minus 4 times a, which is 1, because there's the 1 right there, c, which is negative 11. That whole thing is over 2 times a, or just 2 times 1, which is 2. Now we just simplify. So it's going to be 16, it's going to be minus a negative, which is going to be positive 44, so plus 44, and that's over 2. Let's simplify inside of the square root, 4 plus or minus. That's 16 and 44, 1, that's 60. It's over 2. Let's simplify it. 4 plus or minus, now 60. Let's see, yeah, 6 times 10, but 4 times 15. So the square root of 4 is 2 square root of 15 over 2. Let's simplify. 2 goes into both of those. 2 goes into 4 twice, plus or minus. 2 goes into 2 once. That goes, and it's a square root of 15. That's what you have. Alright, number 17. The only thing different with, well, the main thing different with this is you have a coefficient out in front of the x squared. But you're going to work everything pretty much the same. Here we go, x minus. Or I'm sorry, x equals negative b, so b was negative 7. The opposite of negative 7 is positive 7, plus or minus square root b squared, so 7 squared is 49, minus 4 times a. This time the a is 2, so we put the 2 right here, times c, which is 4, over 2a, which is 2 times 2. Now it's just a matter of simplifying. 7 plus or minus square root. Let's see what we get. 8 fours are 32, so 49 minus 32. Let's see, 41, that's 17, so that's a 17 inside here, over 4. Now you can't simplify the square root of 17. That's all you can do. Let me make sure. Looks like I did everything right. Yeah, it seems too simple, but that's it. That's all you can do. Circle it and you're done.